So I've often talked about my back injury, and somebody has asked me to kind of elaborate on that story so that you guys can understand a little bit more what happened. I was young man at 22, and those were back in the days when I had long Fabio hair, um, and I I wanted to be a stuntman. I wanted to do sword fights. That was my biggest thing. I was working towards my black belt in Taekwondo. I was really wanting to do sword fights, and I was doing fights at the Renaissance Festival with couple great fight directors, and a buddy of mine who was also were at the festival was a professional potter, and he contacted me and he said, "Hey John, can you come help me unload my van?" And I said, "Sure." So I came out to his house. And to me at that time, I was very much into my physical body. I was like, "This is another workout. This is another experience of just me building my body more." So I climbed up in that van, feeling like the strong guy that I was. I picked up that first box of clay. I turned to set it outside of the van, and my spine broke in two. And when it broke in two, it was a debilitating, painful. I was down, and I could not move my legs. And they took me to the hospital, and they said and the doctor basically did X-rays and all that. He says, "Mr. Davis, you have a condition known as spina bifida occulta," which for most people is never an issue. It never really is an issue. Basically, what it means is that some of your vertebrae have not formed properly at birth. Well, three of my vertebrae, when vertebrae form, they come around and they fuse like two hands praying. There's little flanges that fuse together. So you've got a little disc and a little flange. And when mine came around and formed, three of them right on top of my pelvis. When they came around and formed, they came around, and instead of fusing, they missed. So I had these wonky discs with these weird connections, and three of them sitting on top of each other. I still have it, by the way. So I ended up that day picking up that 80-pound box of clay and turning. I literally just took my upper spine and cracked it off the lower spine because they were not stacked properly. So they just, boom, basically came unstacked. Doctor said, "We're not sure you're ever going to walk again." They also said that if I did regain mobility, my back would be forever a bad back, and that my lower body really can't support my upper body, and that I should prepare for a sedentary lifestyle. And I was experiencing a lot of pain. It is one of the most painful things I've ever been through in my life. Probably the most painful thing I've ever been through in my life. And I decided that day, at the doctor's, that I was not going to take his belief. I was going to take my own belief. Now, the reason this happened was not because of my spirituality back then. It had more to do with a book I read by Bruce Lee called the Tao Te Ching Do and his philosophies of martial arts. And in that book, there's lots of things about Bruce Lee which are fascinating, but obstacles come, and you don't become invested in the obstacle. You just see it as something to get out of your way to get to the objective. So for me, it was all about, his other, Bruce Lee in one of his interviews said, "Be like water," right? And when you come to the rock, and when the water comes to the rock in the river, it flows over, around it, and over time through it. So it literally is, no matter what the obstacle is, it's just something in the way of your goal that you have to work with. And so that day I was like, no, I am not giving up. I'm not. This is just an obstacle. This back injury is just an obstacle. I am becoming a stuntman. I am becoming a stuntman. And I'm a firm believer now, after my spiritual awakening, that our present moment thoughts, words, and deeds are the way we create. So I had to keep my thoughts in line. I have to keep my words in line, and I have to take actions. And so, in that bed that day, I declared, I'm going to be a stuntman. I'm going to be a stuntman, and I focused my mind on becoming a stuntman. And I decided that, okay, so I'm going to become a stuntman. So how do I get there? I'm going to work my way down, and I'm going to cure my back. I'm going to heal my back. So I started with my neck. And I started at the top of my neck. I started just moving my neck. My thoughts, words, and deeds were saying, okay, this is the beginning of my journey. I am working down to become a stuntman. So I did my neck, and then I did my shoulders, and I did my arms, and it took about 30 days, and I was able to get up and move around again. One of the most, at that point, I'd been brought back to my wife's grandmother's house, and I was on a couch in the living room to get up to go to the bathroom. I had to get up and move every day after I had regained mobility. My wife would come in, and she would pull me up to a seated position. And then she would get her arms underneath my arms. She would help me stand. And then once I stood, we had to just stand there for a second so I could regain my balance. And then I would hold on to her, and then I would slowly start to turn my body and throw my leg. And once I threw my leg, I could start a momentum and start walking. And this was excruciatingly painful. And then I would go in, I would use the restroom, and then she would have to come in and get me off the toilet and come back to the couch and lay back down. And this went on and on and on. But by day 30, I was able to get up on my own. By a year, I was back to what I would consider my physical self, but I'd say back to a normal physicality, but not back to my personal strength. And a year and 6 months, I got my black belt in Taekwondo, and I went to the Stage Combat or the American Stuntmen's Association workshop in Washington State, and I jumped off a 3-story tower into a fall pad. And then I went on to do over 4,000 live comedy sword fighting stunt shows all over the world, including the front lines of Iraq and Afghanistan. I have friends who I've taught alongside who do the choreography for Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and Highlander, and work at the Old Vic in England, and I've worked with some of the top fight directors in the world. I was in a movie with Brad Pitt where I was a biker in a bar with him, and there's a whole bunch of things. But the moral of the story is, I didn't realize that I was the creator of my experience at that time, but I was still creating. I was still in the process of creating this experience, and I was the one in charge of what was going on. And at that moment was a huge pivotal moment for me, because I came to realize that nothing's impossible. And then I was kind of shocked years later when I found those words in the Bible. If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can ask a mountain to move, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. And I realized that nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible. And as long as I hold my faith in what I want and my desired outcome, I'm going to receive it. And it relies on all of us to hold on to that faith. So my back injury was a huge awakening for me. It was a huge spiritual experience for me prior to my past life experience stuff. But it's still to this day a huge point. It's still to this day a huge lesson that I learned, and I use it in my lessons, because it talks about the idea that you can choose to take somebody else's belief and be paralyzed for the rest of your life, or you can choose to take your own belief and create whatever you want. And that's the importance of my story, my backstory. And I know a lot of people wanted to hear about it, but the healing was of choice and my belief in doing it. So that's my thought on that. You guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. See ya. Bye.
Thank you so much for watching. The John of New channel is solely funded by your generous donations and purchases of private readings and merchandise. To help out, go to johnofnew.com or use the donation link in the description below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.